Section 1 of the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Tony Oliva. The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse by Vicente Blasco Ibañez. Translated by Charlotte Brewster Jordan. Part 1, Chapter 1. The Tryst. In the garden of the expiatory chapel. They were to have met in the garden of the Chapelle Expiatoire at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. But Julio Desnoyers, with the impatience of a lover who hopes to advance the moment of meeting by presenting himself before the appointed time, arrived an half hour earlier. The change of the seasons was at this time greatly confused in his mind, and evidently demanded some readjustment. 5 months had passed since their last interview in this square had afforded the wandering lovers the refuge of a damp, depressing calmness near a boulevard of continual movement, close to a great railroad station. The hour of the appointment was always 5, and Julio was accustomed to see his beloved approaching by the reflection of the recently lit street lamps, her figure enveloped in furs, and holding her muff before her face as if it were a half mask. Her sweet voice, greeting him, had breathed forth a cloud of vapor, white and tenuous, congealed by the cold. After various hesitating interviews, they had abandoned the garden. Their love had acquired the majestic importance of acknowledged fact, and from 5 to 7 had taken refuge in the 5th floor of the Rue de la Pompe, where Julio had an artist's studio. The curtains well drawn over the double glass windows, the cozy hearth fire sending forth its ruddy flame as the only light of the room, the monotonous song of the samovar bubbling near the cups of tea. All the seclusion of life isolated by an idolizing love had dulled their perceptions to the fact that the afternoons were growing longer, that outside the sun was shining later and later into the pearl-covered depths of the clouds, and that a timid and pallid spring was beginning to show its green fingertips in the buds of the branches suffering the last nips of winter, that wild black boar who so often turned on his tracks. Then Julio had made his trip to Buenos Aires, encountering in the other hemisphere the last smile of autumn and the first icy winds from the pampas. And just as his mind was becoming reconciled to the fact that for him winter was an eternal season, since it always came to meet him in his change of domicile from one extreme of the planet to the other, lo, summer was unexpectedly confronting him in this dreary garden. A swarm of children was racing and screaming through the short avenues around the monument. On entering the place, the first thing that Julio encountered was a hoop which came rolling toward his legs, trundled by a childish hand. Then he stumbled over a ball. Around the chestnut trees was gathering the usual warm weather crowd, seeking the blue shade perforated with points of light. Many nursemaids from the neighboring houses were working and chattering here, following with indifferent glances the rough games of the children confided to their care. Near them were the men who had brought their papers down into the garden under the impression that they could read them in the midst of peaceful groves. All of the benches were full. A few women were occupying camp stools with that feeling of superiority which ownership always confers. The iron chairs, pay seats, were serving as resting places for various suburban dames, loaded down with packages, who were waiting for straggling members of their families in order to take the train to the Gare Saint-Lazare. And Julio, in his special delivery letter, had proposed meeting in this place, supposing that it would be as little frequented as in former times. She, too, with the same thoughtlessness, had in her reply set the usual hour at 5 o'clock, believing that after passing a few minutes in the Printemps or the Galerie, on the pretext of shopping, she would be able to slip over to the unfrequented garden without risk of being seen by any of her numerous acquaintances. Desnoyers was enjoying an
Sample complete. Ready to continue?